Hello, everyone, and welcome back to Cyrus Webb Presents. I'm your host, Cyrus Webb. So glad you guys could be with us either on Facebook, LinkedIn, YouTube, and on X. We're glad you all could join us. We're about to connect with our friends over on Instagram as well, so they can be part of our conversation today. And then we're going to connect with our friends over on Amazon Live as well. Have a great guest that's tuning in. Her book is available for pre-order right now, but you guys can go ahead and pre-order it for today to have it ready for when it initially releases. And we're now live on Amazon Live with Cyrus Webb Presents with me, your host, Cyrus Webb. Glad you all could be with us. Today we're speaking with author Babs Walters about her brand new book that's available for pre-order right now here on Amazon. You guys will see it in our carousel, either here in this corner or down below. The book is called Facing the Jaguar. We're going to talk to Babs not only about her extraordinary journey, but also what it's been like for her in life to not only to be able to make a difference, but also to inspire other people along the way. There's a lot of great things we're going to be able to get to, and hopefully you guys will find something you can use for yourself, but also for those that you know. Babs, thank you so much for the time today. Really appreciate it.
Thank you, Cyrus.
Well, Babs, I want to let you and I were just talking before we went live here, and I see you guys already coming in over there on YouTube and on Instagram. I appreciate you guys. The conversation Babs and I are going to be having about her book, Facing the Jaguar, does have to deal with some sensitive topics, just to let you all know. They have to do with assault and also, of course, survivorship. So I want you guys to keep that in mind as we're having our conversation today. It may be something that you may want to come back to, or if this is a topic that may be triggering to you, feel free. We understand that. Feel free to be able to log off now. We want to let you guys know that. But Babs, I want to begin with this with you. I mean, your journey, I think, is one that people can look at and say, "Wow, I want to be able to have that kind of strength." What has it been like for you to already hear from people about how your story is inspiring them?
Well, it goes back for a very long way, Cyrus. When I was 11 years old, I had an experience that made me feel like I was all alone in the world.
Mm-hmm.
And I made a promise to myself that day that someday I would write a book and some other little girl wouldn't feel so all alone.
Yeah.
Well, it's taken me quite a few decades to write this book. I did try to write a couple of times before, but I wasn't healed enough to be able to tell this story, this version of it. So, for the first thing that I guess in answer to your question would be it feels freeing, fabulous to keep that promise to myself after 7 decades, but also it feels like the chaos that was my early life has given me meaning and purpose by being able to help other people find their purpose and tell their story.
And thank you for that. And I think that goes to something you and I were talking about before we went live here, Babs, and that is about realizing the importance of our voice and not letting anyone take that away from us. And it's so interesting for me, Babs, when I was prepping for this segment and I thought about our audience out there. I think this can come up in a lot of different ways. In yours, it came, with assault abuse. It can come up in so many different ways that people feel like their voice doesn't matter, that they don't matter, or that they're invisible. How does it feel to now look at your life and to realize that your life not only matters, but that your life is important?
Well, it's very fulfilling, obviously, but I think I spent my entire corporate career teaching people to find their words and their voice. I was the head of human resources. I headed a sexual harassment and a discrimination investigation committee. And it was interesting that I was having trouble finding my voice, but I could support and encourage other people. And the more I researched and the more I learned and the more I practiced, I got better at it. So, but I think that like all change, the first step in any change is awareness. So
Yeah.
without that awareness, we're not going to make much progress. And what we're doing here, talking about something that is not a normal cocktail party or dinner conversation,
Mhm.
helps people understand that these things are still happening, what they can do to prevent them, and that keeping secrets, which is the heaviest, guiltiest part of this story,
Right.
is really a burden. And by finding your voice, however you can express it, you are unburdening yourself of the weight of the shame and the guilt.
Babs, when did you get to a place in your life that you could see yourself as being fearless?
Well, I have to pick a very diplomatic way of saying this.
Okay.
Um, I've been married 2 times before,
Mm-hmm.
and I initiated both of my divorces.
Mm-hmm.
But I think that was the first extraordinarily brave thing that I ever did, because my first husband didn't want to leave our home.
Mm-hmm.
And when I asked him, I said, in 30 days, if you're not out of here, I'm leaving. And he laughed at me. Where was I going? I had never worked. I had little kids. 30 days later, I walked out of that house.
Mm-hmm.
That was brave.
Yeah. Yeah. And I wanted to ask you that question, and you set this up perfectly for me and also for our audience, Bab. So thank you for that, because I think as we look at the title of the book, "Facing the Jaguar," and we'll get to it personally for you, I think all of us have our own jaguar, right, in life that we have to face, and we are left with these choices of, are we going to allow the fear of what might happen stop us from what we know that we deserve, or the life that we want. So did you feel like, when you, in the example you just gave there, that let you know that it was okay to choose you? Because I think that's really what your story also shares, is that you're not willing to be in prison to anyone, whether it's to someone who may have not been the best toward you, or done things toward you that they should not have, that you were going to be able to choose you, and that was okay.
Well, I have to tell you that sometimes we do things in life that scare us,
Right.
but we have to do them anyway.
Right.
And I frequently, when I get scared from a new experience, I remind myself that I've done some really difficult things in my life, because as soon as I left that marriage, I had gotten my first full-time job as an adult. I was working 3 months. The company went out of business and left the state. And here I am with my own apartment, my kids, and nobody to support me and no job.
Mhm.
So being brave means doing things even when you are afraid.
Mhm. You talk about, for yourself, that alone time, and I could resonate with this. In the book, you actually say, if you see what it was in chapter 12, Babs. Throughout my childhood, my most favorite times were when I was alone in our apartment, with no criticism, no beatings, no violations. I think, for a lot of us, and I think regardless of what type of trauma or situation we've been in, having that time with ourselves, sometimes it can be, like other people may dread that, for others it can find comfort in that. What was it like for you to think about that, though, that for yourself, that you could be okay alone, that you didn't need to be in a situation that was harmful or not helpful to you?
That's a great question, because I think about that frequently.
Mhm.
I happen to like my own company. I can amuse myself. Um, but in that reference that you're bringing up, it was that anytime my parents were home in the apartment, it was not safe.
Yeah.
And when I could be alone and read, I was living vicariously through the characters in the books.
Hmm.
And of course, when I grew up in the 40s and the 50s, every little girl's book had a happy ending.
Mm.
So I had convinced myself that no matter what trials and tribulations I would have to go through, I was going to be victorious one day.
Yeah.
So that gave me strength, as well as the peace and the enjoyment of seeing how other people lived, because obviously there were no books about how people were living the way I was.
Right. I'm so glad you said that, and I want to come back to that. I want to say, because I see you guys coming in over there on LinkedIn, YouTube. I appreciate you guys being with us. For those who were just tuning in, welcome. You're watching Cyrus Webb Presents. I'm speaking today with author Babs Walters about her new book. It's available for pre-order right now. It's not out yet, but it's available for pre-order. You guys can pre-order it now on Amazon. It's called "Facing the Jaguar," and the subtitle of the book is also important: a memoir of courage and Confrontation. You all can be able to get the book if you guys are joining us on the Amazon side. You see it here on this corner or down below. You can either pre-order the print edition or the Kindle edition there. Have it highlighted for you guys in the carousel. For those of you joining us on Facebook, LinkedIn, and YouTube, you'll find a link that will bring you guys over to Amazon to get it. For those joining us on Instagram, I see you guys over there as well. You all will be able to find the link in my stories as well. So I want to go back to what you just said about the books that you were reading then, because now, thanks to people like you, Babs, there are people out there that can read books that have to deal with things they've gone through. How does it feel to know that now you're giving a place for people to not only to not feel alone in what they've gone through, but to see how other people who've gone through it can have their own version of a happy ending?
Yeah, you're right. I belong to a number of organizations of experts who are actually training about keeping children safe and
Yeah.
all of the things that we never used to have to think about, or people don't want to think about, but in the area of prevention.
Right.
I have also been introduced to people who are working with perpetrators and finding out what it was in their lives that caused them to harm children. We're learning a lot about the internet and how pornography is available to children and how that engages them and can get some of them into trouble. So this is a different world that we're living in than the one I grew up in. And so I'm grateful for that.
Yeah.
And I still think that one of the most important things to know about child sexual abuse is that the majority of the cases are not reported. So even the high statistics that we get, 1 out of 4 girls, 1 out of 6 boys, those are underreported statistics. And that it's every adult's responsibility to help keep children safe.
Are you encouraged today in 2025, Babs, that at least people are more willing to talk about it and to address it publicly?
Yes, and it is definitely an improvement. Certainly an improvement compared to my experience. But I know that a number of public school libraries will not be able to carry my book because of the subject matter.
Right.
Regular public libraries can, but high school libraries, my book might be important to some high school students.
Yeah.
I know that when I taught my journal writing classes, I was working with a women's residence for drug and alcohol rehab. And while I went in there to work with them on their addiction, I would have to say that at least 50% of them had sexual abuse in their lives. So we need to normalize the conversation in that people can hear it and they can ask a question. What can I do to help?
Right.
What can I do to make a difference?
In the subtitle of the book, Facing the Jaguar, you mentioned 2 important C words there, Babs. One being courage, the other one confrontation. I want to talk about the courage aspect because it does take a lot of courage to speak out. It does take a lot of courage not to feel like you'll be judged or seen as the one who did something wrong. I have, I tell people I don't have that type of abuse in my background, but I have over the years in doing the show and even growing up and knowing friends of mine that have gone through, I always tell them, to realize how brave you have to be able to speak up for yourself and to know this is not your fault. Talk to us about that, because I think this is such an important thing people don't give themselves enough credit for that have come out of abuse or trauma, especially as a child, about the courage that it takes. What has it been like for you to realize how courageous you are in doing what you've done?
Well, until you just reminded me, Cyrus, I don't think about it too much, but thank you for that. That was very nice. I actually see that in 2 separate parts because right now, the courage that's mentioned in the book comes from my sister. I have a younger sister. And at one point in our lives, she demanded that we sit down with my father and confront him and ask him all kinds of questions and find out exactly why he did what he did to us. And I didn't want to do that. But I felt guilty because this was my younger sister, and had I resolved the issue, my father would not have turned to her. So I agreed reluctantly, because my father was a very angry person with a lot of guns. I believed that he was going to kill us that night. And I wrote letters to my two little children explaining why they would never see me again.
Wow.
So I don't know if that was courage or stupidity or guilt, Cyrus, but that's where the first courage came from.
Yeah.
But what I've learned since then, and I've started the Family Secret Keepers, is that almost all families have secrets that they expect the members to keep. It could be secret about somebody's suicide, or a disabled sibling, or an alcoholic parent. It doesn't have to be my secret. But part of the burden in life of that guilt and shame and keeping quiet about something that's really harmful to you is that it hurts you physically, mentally, and spiritually. And that by telling, you relieve yourself of some of that weight that should not have been yours in the first place.
Yeah.
So if that's courage, well, I guess then I have it. I've been doing all of my work to encourage people to speak out, whatever it is. And there are many different ways to speak out.
Mm-hmm.
You can write a note on a piece of paper and tear it up or burn it or flush it down the toilet. You can make a recording on your own phone.
Yeah.
You can find somebody you trust. I happen to have anonymous postcards on my website that anybody could fill out and share their secret. And then, of course, there are people that are going to want to be able to put it on the record. Last January, I recorded my story for the Library of Congress under a program called Brave Voices. And I encourage other people to share their stories that way, too. It's very freeing, and it's a lightness that comes over you. It's sort of like a prayer or a meditation, you know, it's like giving it over.
Yeah. So, and I think what you just said there, Babs, is so important for our audience, because I think, as you mentioned, courage shows up in different ways, and that can look different. So I think it's a great reminder for our audience that what may work for one person may not work for everyone. But you just said something else about brave voices. Again, another great word. Those reminders. How important has it been for you to remind yourself, Babs, of not only how courageous, but also how brave you are, and not only to talk about your own experiences, but also to be a champion for others?
Well, I have to tell you that my little sister, is not supporting the book or the work that I'm doing. So it's kind of confusing to me how some people shut down or choose to go a different way.
Yeah.
It's important to me, and that's why I have, if anybody wants to send me their email, the checklist on how to tell if you're ready to tell. And that's just speakerbabs@gmail. But it's really important for people to know what the stages are, because not everybody that you can share your story with is safe to share your story with. Right. And all of the first people that I shared mine with actually hurt me even more, which is kind of upsetting, but that was their capability. I just want to encourage people to do what's right for them. And it could be brave just to think about who you might want to tell it to.
Right. Well, Babs, I think this conversation is so important, and I appreciate you being with us as we are being able to help people know about the book being available right now for pre-order. Again, everyone, the book is called Facing the Jaguar. The author is Babs Walters. Again, you can get the book here on Amazon, either in print or in the Kindle edition. You can go ahead and pre-order it now. It's available through our friends at Amazon.com. The book officially comes out in June. Babs, thank you so much for this conversation. Thank you so much for the work you're doing. You mentioned your website. Let our audience know how to stay connected with you.
It's babswalters.com. So it's www.babswalters.com. Cyrus, thank you for being of the male persuasion and being able to talk about women's issues as well. I appreciate that. And as just as a final, what I'd like to say to people is that healing is not a destination. It's a journey. So the questions that you've asked me today, some of them are still ongoing. I haven't reached that finish line yet.
Right.
But the other thing that I like to say to people, it's never too late.
Right.
Just keep at it.
Exactly. And I think, and if I could just add, Babs, that they're not alone. And I think that's why your story is so important. And everyone's story, as we said in the beginning of the conversation, is so important. So, Babs, again, thank you so much for this, and looking forward to having you back on the show again.
Thank you.
More than welcome. And we thank your audience for tuning in to another great segment of Cyrus Webb Presents. Until next time, you all make it a great one. We'll talk to you soon. Take care.